Hi everyone. In today's newspaper analysis, let's begin with the first article, that is the new regulation for GRAMG to be finalized. This ambitious project, that is Viksit Bharat Guaranteed for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Act 2025, is currently hitting a regulatory bottleneck. While designed to replace the legacy of Mandrega, presently the Union Rural Development Ministry is finding that the rough edges of implementations of this particular project is harder to smoothen over the legislative process itself. This project was replaced by the earlier scheme, like we know, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guaranteed Act of 2005. Before this new scheme of GRAMG starts, the Ministry of Rural Development needs to finalize several rules related to implementation and fund distribution for smooth working and distribution of funds. Under the new system, the central government will decide how much money each state should get. Okay, this will be based on objective factor. Remember this factor, objective factor, because this is what the article has focused on. So it will be based on objective factor such as the level of development, demand for rural jobs, and migrations of worker. So the Ministry of Rural Development must frame rules under 11 categories before the implementation of this particular scheme. And these categories could be such as social audit, fund allocation, panchayat categorization, and implementation of different guidelines. Okay, so before we go into what is exactly the issue of implementing it or what are the problems the government is facing, just let us have a quick review about these two different projects of Mandrega of 2025 and GRAMG of 2000 and Mandrega of 2005 and GRAMG of 2025. If you look into the basic difference, Manrega provided 100 days of rural household employment, whereas GRAMG has increased it to 125 days. Manrega provided work whenever the worker asked for, but however, here in GRAMG, work based are basically pre-approved by the Viksit Gram Panchayat plan. Next, in the Manrega, the center paid 100% of the unskilled wages, but here in GRAMG, the burden will be shared with a ratio of 60 is to 40. Next, there is no statutory pause in the Manrega, like labor shortages during the harvest time. But however, in GRAMG, there is a statutory pause. That is, the state can halt the work for up to 60 days during the peak season of farming or any other agricultural practice. So let us look into what is the issue with this new regulation of GRAMG. Okay, the first issue is normative allocation formula. Okay, the central government has determined state-wise fund allocation based on certain parameters. And what are the parameters? The first parameter is the level of development. Second parameter is the demand for rural employment. Okay. Third is the migration pattern. And the fourth parameter is the infrastructural indicator. So on the basis of these parameters, the government will decide that which state will get how much amount of fund. So what is the problem here? See, first we need to understand what is normative allocation formula. See, normative allocation is a formula which is based where the funds are distributed according to a set standard, or we can say according to a norm. Okay, and the objective data, rather than simply responding to how much work a state says it residents demand. So in simple word, if I have to tell you, that is, the fund will be allocated on the basis of certain objective data. Okay, rather than the state saying that we want this much amount of work, or we want this much amount of fund for this much amount of work. So it will not be based on what the state is saying on the basis of its residential demand, or on the basis of its worker demand, but the fund will be allocated on the basis of certain set norms and standard. So yes, this will be definitely controversial, and it will conflict with different states around the country. We'll look into this. Okay, the next, if you talk about the next issue, if you talk about regarding the normative allocation fund. Okay, so in the normative allocation fund, there could be arguments, like there could be an argument for in pro, and also there could be an argument in the anti segment. Okay, in pro, if you look into the pro argument, the article says that this normative allocation will definitely prevent richer or more administratively efficient state from cornering the lion's share of the budget. Okay, it will ensure that the poorer states like Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand gets a guaranteed slice of the pie, even if their local administration is slower to demand it. Okay, because the standard setup will definitely give them the sum of fund or sum of money. But however, in the anti argument, we can say that the state with high distress, like those facing sudden drought or mass return migration, okay, in terms of fixed normative cap, to prevent them from scaling up employment during emergencies, because this state, if they do not fall under this particular cap, or under this particular norms, then even in these times of drought and mass return migration or any kind of famine, they will not get the money which they were supposed to get. So if the norm says that the state is supposed to get 5,000 crore, but for some reason there's a crop failure due to some disaster. So this crop failure will create a demand of an extra 2,000 crore rupees fund from the central government. And in this case, the state will not get it from the central government. So there's a pro argument, and also there's an anti argument. The next is all gram panchayats will be classified into three categories. Category A, which will be considered as a higher development. Category B, which will be considered as a moderate development, and category C, which will be considered under the lower development. And the parameters included for this particular categorizations are like infrastructure ability, rural poverty level, proximity to the urban areas, migration of worker. Okay, so the gram panchayat has to be classified. So this is another issue, because it is very difficult to classify the gram panchayat on the basis of these parameters, because not all villages are going to have all of these parameters. Some of the villages might have infrastructure, but we might also have rural poverty, high rural poverty, or might have high migration in spite of having infrastructure. Okay, so this will be another problematic. The last, or not the last, and in fact, but the third, the most controversial, is the debate between the center and the state. There are two different views. What does the state say? The state says that the allocation should reflect the actual demand for the job, especially in the high rural migration region. Okay, and on the contrary, the center argues that the allocation should be considered on the past performance of Mandrega. So these two will definitely conflict and will have a contradictory viewpoint, and it will be very difficult for the government to come to a conclusion on the basis of this. Okay, next, for this scheme to officially roll out, there are five essential elements which must be met by the state government. What are the five essential elements? The first one is the completion of the existing work. See, all ongoing projects under the old Manrega must be finished, so that there is new projects under the GRAMG. Second is DBT integration. The state must ensure or must join the DBT spurs in the banking platform. This is critical, as the new act marks for the first time that the center and the state will share a financial burden of 60-40 ratio for this scheme. So there has to be a mandate DBT spurs. Okay. Third is the digital verification, that is the KYC verification. A massive drive for eKYC verification of the existing job cards will be carried out, where every person falling under the scheme has to have their e-verification, I mean EKYC. So what will this ensure? This will ensure like digital governance, transparency in welfare schemes, technology in rural development. The fourth is the use of geospatial planning portal. The state must use the Yuktara portal to create a Viksit Gram Panchayat master schedule. And what is the purpose of this Yukt Dhara? It is to prepare an accurate Gram Panchayat plan. And the last one is the administrative readiness. That is, the state should have alignment with all the four categories of the union frame rule, which we just discussed earlier. So what is the significance for all of these mandated uh, preconditions for the state? The significance is that it will reform the rural employment program. That is, major restructuring of the India's largest social welfare scheme. Next, it will ensure the better transformation of the fund, and it will also improve efficiency and fairness. Third, with the technology, it will be helpful for the government and the state to integrate the people, wherein EKYC, DBT platform, and geospatial planning will ensure further transparency and fairness in transformation of the fund. And the fourth, you can say that yes, it will strengthen the local government, where great role for the Gram Panchayat in development planning will be very important in making this scheme a success one. Okay, see, though the government hoped for an April 1st rollout, but the ready signal is still a way off. It's quite far away. We cannot say that is going to roll out in April 1st. But once the central government officially notifies the commencement date, the state will have 6 month window to fully transition into the new system. So this is the prelims question you can look into, that which of the following platform is used for geospatial planning of Gram Panchayat work? It's definitely Yukt Dhara. Okay. The next article is India tap alternative crude supply as West Asia conflict drags on. Okay. The news basically discusses how India is trying to secure an alternative, crude oil supply because of the rising tension in West Asia. We know that this conflict in this region, which involved Israel, Iran, and United States, have created uncertainty in the global market. Okay, and since India imports most of its oil, any disruption in this region will definitely affect India's energy security and economy. Okay, see, why is this important? Why is this news important? See, India imports around 88% of its crude oil requirement, and, and this large portion of this oil comes from Middle East, which passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Strait of Hormuz is under the control of Iran. So you can say that 50% out of 88% comes to the Strait of Hormuz. And definitely India will have a shortage or will have problem in maintaining its energy security and economy. Okay, see, about 20% of the global oil trade passes through this region. The global oil, if you look into, 20% passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So this Strait of Hormuz becomes very important, and any kind of instability in this region will not just impact India but also will impact the global market. Okay, if you look into recent data, as per the article, okay, the crude oil price has surged to rupees 92 per barrel, which was only 70, okay, when the US and Israel attacked Iran in the late February. But after this, since then, it has raised to 92. So what is India doing to overcome this problem and to bypass this issue? What is India doing? See, to avoid surplus disruption, India is diversifying its crude oil import. That is, Indian refiners are purchasing oil from alternative sources such as the United States, Russia, definitely who have supplied us oil for a very long period of time, and also have given us oil in spite of the sanctions put out by USA. Next is India is importing it from West Africa and Latin America. Okay, see, after the Russia-Ukraine war, many Western countries imposed sanction, we know, on Russian oil. But however, Russia started offering oil at a very discounted price at that time. Okay, and India, thus taking the advantage, increase its import from Russia. Okay, now you can say that currently India is importing around 1 million barrel of Russian crude oil per day. Okay, and out of this conflict, around 120 million barrels of Russian crude oil are at the sea currently on an halt. Okay, and looking into this condition, recently the US government has waived the sanction put on Russia for oil shipments until April 5th. So the sanction will be lifted, it will be waived in fact till until April 5th, and India will definitely look for alternative during this time period, that India has maximum amount of crude oil imported to its country so that there is no crisis at times. So if you look into the major Indian refineries like Reliance, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, HPCL Mittal Energy Limited, what have they done? They have started securing additional crude cargoes to maintain supply. And among these, some of the refineries have also postponed their maintenance shutdown so that they can continue producing fuel and maintain the buffer stock. Okay, so, if this is done, then we can say that the energy security will ensure that the country has reliable, affordable, and uninterrupted access to the energy resources. Apart from this, though we have a reserve of crude oil, we can say that the national reserve of crude oil of India will only last for 50 days, not beyond that. So what we can do is that we can definitely improve, or we can increase the strategic petroleum reserves which are located in Vishakhapatnam, Mangalore, Padur, and etc. Okay. The next article is building a Viksit Bharat, Lok Bhavan, Assam's approach through Seva Sankalp Saptah. Okay, this topic is connected to your GS2 on governance, and also it is connected to your GS4 ethics. How we'll look into it. Okay, see, the article talks about building a Viksit Bharat through the spirit of service or seva. Okay, see, we know India is currently on a special period called Amrit Kal, which is the journey from 2022 to 2047. The goal during this period is to transform India into a developed nation. Okay, also we refer to as Viksit Bharat 2047. Okay, but however, we should know that development here is not only about economic development, it is also about values, ethics, citizen participation, and responsible governance. Okay, keeping in mind this vision was recently seen, it got reflected in Assam through an initiative called the Seva Sankalp Saptah, which is organized at the Lok Bhavan under the guidance of Lakshman Prasad Acharya, the governor of Assam. It was a program which was a week long where several activities were organized. There were youth discussion on ideas of Viksit Bharat. Okay, then there was blood donation drive under the Indian Red Cross Society. Then there was the cleanliness drive organized by Guwahati Municipal Corporation, health camp with the National Health Mission, awareness programs against the drugs under the Nasha Mukti Bharat Abhiyan, and initiatives for empowering, adolescent girls. Along with, there were other programs also such as Vedic wisdom and cultural heritage. The main idea behind this program is very simple, but it is, however, remember, it is very powerful. That is, the governance should not remain limited to offices. It should connect with people and society. Now, if you look into this article from our ethics perspective, first we can see that the first one is, we can talk about the value of seva, or the selfless service. We study it in our ethics. In Indian philosophy, service to the society is considered as the highest duty. So, for a civil servant, also, the public service should not be seen as just a job, but rather it should be seen as a responsibility towards the society. So, the first one is seva, or the selfless service. The second one we can talk about is the compassion and empathy. Activities which were done like the blood donation, health camp, etc., shows the importance of caring for vulnerable groups such as women, children, senior citizens, the needy ones. The third is the civic responsibility and discipline. So the cleanliness drive reminds us that development is not only government's responsibility. Citizens must also participate equally so that it becomes easier for the government for development. Okay, this idea of cleanliness drive is closely linked to the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi, who believed that public cleanliness reflects the character of a society. Okay, and the fourth, when you talk about, is youth empowerment. See, the future of any nation depends on its youth population, right? So encouraging students to think about their role in national development promotes leadership, responsibility, and ethical citizenship. Okay, another ethical value we can see from this particular article is gender equality. The program focused on, you know uh, adolescent girls' health and their behavior. This shows that a developed society must provide equal opportunities and dignity to women. Okay, and the last one, which we have seen as Vedic wisdom and cultural heritage. Okay, this also reflects the values of tradition and culture. This shows that India's development model is not only modern and technological, but also it is rooted in civilizational heritage, so that in spite of becoming a Viksit Bharat, okay, which we just talked in the earlier article, India remains rooted to its culture and tradition and to the Vedic wisdoms. So the main message of this article is very clear. A Viksit Bharat cannot be built only by policies or economic growth. See, it requires citizens who are responsible, compassionate, and committed to service. Okay, and such initiatives like the Seva Sankalp Saptah reminds us that nation building is a collective effort between government and society, and it cannot be done alone by a government or alone by a society. Both has to work equally and has to give equal effort so that the entire nation develops. The next article is a very interesting article, and this is an article where we can link it to our environment and climate change. And also the article has geographical linkages to geomorphology related to icebergs and etc. Okay, that is the death of a trillion-ton giant. What is this trillion-ton giant? Just to make this clear, we are talking about an iceberg. What is the name of this iceberg? The name of the iceberg is A23A. Okay, so it is one of the largest iceberg present on the earth, which is now slowly and gradually getting disintegrated. If you talk about this iceberg was born in 1986 from the Fincher-Rooney ice shelf. Where is this Fincher-Rooney ice shelf? We'll just look into the map. So this is the map of Antarctica. Okay, here you will find the Fincher-Rooney ice shelf, and here you will find the Weddell Sea. Okay, so this iceberg was born in this particular place, and today slowly and gradually this iceberg is moving, is has broken from the Fincher-Rooney ice shelf and is moving into the large open ocean. Okay, so this is the location of the iceberg. And if you look into some other location, here you will see the Ross Sea. Here you will see an island which is called as Ross Island. And recently there was one penguin who got viral when there was speculation regarding the penguin going to commit suicide. This particular penguin was shot in this region. Okay, then if you look into these places, you will find the India's Antarctic missions which are going on, like the Maitri program. Okay, now coming to the article, let's talk about, see, this particular iceberg, that is the A23A, spent over 3 decades stuck on the seabed of the Weddell Sea. I have shown you the Weddell Sea. So it got stuck in the Weddell Sea and stayed there for almost 3 decades. And in 2022, in 2020, it finally broke free and drifted into the iceberg LA towards the South Atlantic region. Okay, and this week we have witnessed its final stage as it fragmented into smaller pieces near the South George Island. And if you see here, you will find the South George Island. So this iceberg has broken from here, and is moving towards the South Atlantic, and finally we have seen its small broken pieces, I mean fragmented pieces, in this South George Island. Related to this iceberg, there are certain concepts which you should remember, like this, such as the hydro fracturing or the blue ice beneath. So what is this? See, in an iceberg that thought, that is when the iceberg is going to die or is going to melt, the top layer of the white snow melts away, revealing the ancient highly compressed blue ice beneath. You see this image. When you see this image, you will see that this upper part of this iceberg has melted and there's a creation of a pool here. Okay, in this, what happened is that when this pool is created, we can see the bluish color of this ice which is beneath the iceberg. And when this color is revealed, then we can say that the iceberg is in its last stage, and the majority of this iceberg has either broken or has either melted down. Okay, and what is this hydrofracturing? Hydrofracturing is basically where the surface meltwater acts like a wedge, splitting the ice from within. That is, after the melting of the iceberg, you will find a pool which is formed on top of this iceberg, and this pool have vents which are connecting to the bed of the ocean. And through this vent, what happens? There is transformation of energy, heat energy, which further intensifies the breaking of the rock, I mean breaking of the iceberg. And as a result, the entire iceberg breaks into fragments and melts with the water. So this hydrofracturing and blue ice, I mean exposure of blue ice, are basically indicators of that the iceberg is melting slowly and gradually. How do you know about them? We know about them through satellite imagery. If you look into this iceberg in 1986, this was the area of this iceberg. In 2026 early January, this was the area, and by March it has shrunk to only this much. Why? Because the iceberg is moving more into Atlantic Ocean, where it is meeting with the warm ocean currents and is further melting. Okay, this journey of this iceberg, like I told you, began 4 decades away or ago from the Fincher-Rooney ice shelf. Okay, and it started moving in the early 2020s. Now, if you have to talk about the entire journey, you see this iceberg, when it broke off from the Fincher-Rooney ice shelf, this iceberg came to the Weddell Sea, near the Weddell Sea, somewhere here. This iceberg remained static for a long period of time with just its getting attached to the bed of the ocean, like as if it is kneeling down. And in this time period, it came in trap for months around a sea vortex, which is known as the Taylor column. So you see, this is a vortex. What is this vortex? It is an ocean current which circulates around this iceberg. Okay, and finally in 2020, this iceberg broke off from the vortex and started moving towards the South George Island, somewhere here. Okay, and thus we can say that it broke and it finally is getting disintegrated into smaller pieces and going to mix with the ocean. Now if we look into the effect of this particular iceberg, melting of this particular iceberg, first effect you can talk about is that when this iceberg goes and hits the South George Island, this South George Island here has huge or high number of inhabitants of penguins. So this iceberg is going to create instability, ecological instability, and thus it will result to death of large numbers of marine species. So this is one negative. But however, what is more important is that, yeah, definitely the second you can talk about, there will be rise of sea level. Definitely such a huge, chunk of ice, when it melts, will definitely rise the sea level. But also remember that in such icebergs, when they melt, there are certain positive aspects also. So what is the positive aspect? See, when this iceberg melts, this iceberg had large amount of nutrients and irons which acted as a fertilizers trapped within the iceberg. So this was the iceberg. There are a lot of large numbers of nutrients and irons or other minerals. So when the iceberg melts, these nutrients get released into the ocean, and it becomes very useful for the phytoplanktons, and thus the chain or the domino effect continues. When the phytoplanktons grow, there is invitation of small fishes invite medium sized fishes, and medium sized fishes invite the large sized fishes. So you can say that in one way it will affect ecology in one hand. On the contrary, it will also improve ecology, that is the marine ecology. So this is all about your the A23 A iceberg. Okay, things to remember is the Weddell Sea, the Taylor column. Okay, then the South George Island, then the Fincher Rooney ice shelf. Okay, and just for your information, let me tell you, here you will find the tip of South America. Here you'll find the tip of South America, Chile. You'll find it here. Okay, so just for your reference. The next article is BharatNet link 2.15 lakh Gram Panchayat. See, BharatNet is the government of India's flagship project to provide high-speed broadband internet to all Gram Panchayat, that is village councils in India. Okay, what is the objective of BharatNet? If you look into the objective, the first objective is that it will connect all rural areas with optical fiber internet. Okay, it will reduce the digital divide between the urban and rural India. Okay, it will enable digital services and e-governance in the rural area. It will improve the education, telemedicines, and different digital payment methods in the rural regions. Okay, and this particular program of BharatNet was launched under the Digital India Initiative, which was implemented by BBNL, that is Bharat Broadband Network Limited. Okay, through this BharatNet project, more than, you know 2.15 lakh gram panchayat have been connected with high speed broadband. This helps villages access digital services such as online education, telemedicine, and government welfare schemes. Okay, then you can talk about like the India's optical fiber network has also expanded significantly under this project, which has increased from 19 lakh road kilometer in 2019 to 42 lakh road kilometer in 2025. Along with this, the rollout of 5G connectivity has reached almost all districts of India. I cannot say how successful is it or how true it is, but the article says that yes, the 5G has reached almost all districts in India. Okay, supported by more than 5 lakh telecom towers. But how successful exactly it is, yeah, that is controversial, because there are some places which are not in the rural regions, some places which are near to the urban regions but has poor network connectivity and also has failed to provide 5G network. Okay. Under the scheme, to provide affordable in public internet, the government has launched the Prime Minister Wi-Fi Access Network Interface, which is called as the PM WANI scheme, which has created more than 4 lakhs Wi-Fi hotspots across the country. The India's digital ecosystem is also supported by the digital public infrastructure, which includes Aadhaar, UPI, DigiLocker, which makes services delivery faster and more transparent. And at the same time, advanced computing capacity is also been strengthened. Right? The government uses the cloud platform, the government cloud platform, which is called as the Meghraj. Okay, remember this name, Meghraj. And also we have seen that on the basis of the ability of network and the involvement of government, the data price has fallen from 269 per GB in 2014 to 8 to 10 per GB today. Again, this I cannot say much about it, the article says about it, but how controversial it is, yes, people know about it. Okay, and this approach of BharatNet has brought India as the second largest internet user after China. But what is more questioning from our analytical ability is that India could be second in number, but how effectively has this internet been used by the population? And here, if you look into, as per data, the rural India has higher internet users than the urban India. So just imagine the rural India. Now, when somebody talks about digital divide, and yes, digital divide is present today. We can talk about it, we can discuss about it, we can have a debate about it. But what about this data of 227 million people in the rural areas using more internet than the urban area? So the digital divide here is not with connectivity. The digital divide here is with more knowledge about the uses of internet. Okay. So, what has India done more to under the Bharat net linkage? Yes, India has improved or strengthened the high performance computing capacity through the National Supercomputer Mission. Okay, next, India has availed the importance and the easy accessibility to platforms like UPI, and we know UPI has become one of the world's largest, digital transaction, monetary transaction app. Okay, so if India continues to expand, digital connectivity and improves digital literacy, and along with it strengthen the technological capacity, because there's a lot of fraud starts going around because of this particular digital expansion in India. Okay, India, if does all of these things like strengthening technology, improve digital literacy, okay, India can become a global leader in digital economy. Okay, therefore, initiatives like BharatNet, 5G expansion, digital public infrastructure are not only improving governance but also helping India move towards its long-term goal of becoming a developed and technologically powerful nation of 2000, of which we referred as the Viksit Bharat 2047. Okay, this is the prelim set question which you can practice, and also the main set questions which you can practice from this article. Thank you very much. Hope to see you in the next class.